All right, folks, today we're going to talk about stress management. For years, I've been talking about stress management, but I haven't been able to articulate it in its pieces. And recently, I've been listening to a lot of neuroscience folks like Andrew Huberman or Carol Dweck, and they've been able to articulate a lot of the things that a lot of the people with my background do naturally. So I'm going to talk about stress today and stress management protocols. So you've heard me talk about hormesis or hormetic stress and non-hormetic stress. And hormesis is this idea of just enough stress to cause a positive adaptation, and then you have non-hormetic stress, which is so much stress it breaks the system, like the straw that broke the camel's back. But those still didn't explain really how to manage stress. So with this, the way that it's been delineated, the way they're researching it now, it makes it much easier to talk about what that looks like. So that's what we're going to get into today. All right, so I drew this up today, this little page, this concept, and we're going to talk about it. The first thing is stress. All right, we got it. We understand that we're told more to be in reduce stress than manage it. And then when we talk about managing it, we don't discuss what that means. What we're talking about is using stress as a leverage point, being able to use it to move the needle the way that we want to go. If you don't have stress management, what you have is the first side, which is distress. Distress, it starts this nasty circle that keeps going around like a washing machine, and you never really get out of it, and it makes you sick, and you have all these problems, and it just sends you off the edge. Some people can survive in that, but you can't thrive in it. You want to get out of the distress mode and get into the success mode. So the success idea is managing it, and it comes in three different types. We're going to talk about skill set first. Often when you hear me talking about something, you'll hear me say mindset trumps skill set. And I talk about learning how to be uncomfortable or being comfortable being uncomfortable, all of those things. This is delineated now. Now we can delineate it. But if you have a skill set, dealing with the stress is easier. So if I'm in a gunfight versus someone that's never been in a gunfight, my stress level will not be as high as someone that's never been in that situation. If you throw me into the ocean and sea state where I got to swim out, I've done that. I've done that a lot. My stress level is not going to be as high as somebody that doesn't know how to swim well. So whatever your thing is, whether it's a job interview, whether it's learning a new sport, whether it's learning a new language, whether it's hanging out with new people, whether it's whatever it might be, the action of having a skill that you've practiced makes that easier. So everything has a skill set. Learn a skill set for the problem you have. That will help. Okay, that's one piece. The thing that made us successful was this concept of micro wins. We often hear that you hear a bunch of people talk about, well, the journey's more important than the end. You know, the destination. Journey's more important than the destination. What does that mean? Like, not for everybody, right? But what they're trying to say is, when you have a new input, or when you have the way that Huberman talks about it is, you get agitated. That agitation is cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, or epinephrine, norepinephrine, however you want to talk about it. That gets spiked, and that agitates you, and then it moves you into fight, flight, or freeze. The skill set will push you into fight or flight. Okay, you need a skill for both of those. Freeze, you're just locked up. So you need the skill set to push you one way or the other, or you need to have drive to push you one way or the other. If you decide to move into either one, but we're going to go into fight first. If you're going to go into a forward action on something, once you get agitated and you start moving that way, the more small micro goals you hit, the more dopamine is released. And the more of those you hit, the lower the adrenaline gets, the lower the cortisol gets, and we start creating a buffer for that. That's the key to the journey is better than the destination, because now what's happening is by setting these micro goals, these tiny goals, and celebrating them, even if it's internal, that micro celebration releases dopamine. That dopamine release begins to make the action of doing something more enjoyable. People say, how can you work out like that? How can you get into the gym and work out that hard by yourself? How can you they hear about sniper school, or they hear about trying out for the sniper unit, they hear about recon school or whatever school, and they're like, how in the world can you do that? A friend of mine breaks his ankle 4 days before he's got to do his final ruck in the Q course, which is 20 something miles with 40 pounds on your back, and you have a certain amount of time you got to do that in. He did it with a broken ankle. How does he do that? Micro goals. Right? We know how to suffer. We're good at suffering. Those micro goals, and with the internal celebration, I'm going to beat that guy. I'm going to make it that next 10 minutes. I'm not going to stop until lunchtime. I'm not going to stop until after that test. All of those things that you see make the journey worth it. Okay, that's probably the number one key. The third part, which it says state change. What I mean by state change is, this is my external environment and this is my internal environment. Sometimes I want them even. Sometimes I want to be more elevated than my external, and sometimes I want to be less elevated. There's a bunch of ways to do that, but I'm going to give you examples of each of those first. 2005, I become a team leader in Iraq, running government officials around northern Iraq. When you leave an embassy, when you leave the government center or a military base, and you leave that protective bubble, everything out there is super elevated, external, coming in on you. If we match that, you're not going to be able to maintain that match for very long. It's 12 of you, 16 of you, 4 of you, how many ever it is, against all of this giant wave, and you're not going to be able to maintain that level of intention and attention. So I need everybody to lower, so everything is a little bit easier to deal with. And then we can take in more information. We're not so completely focused that we miss the periphery. So I would do stuff like, people had to hug before we started a mission, no using derogatory terms to the local population, no heavy metal or gangster rap when we're on a mission. By doing those things, it lowered the internal state compared to the external state, and we had far fewer altercations than anyone else, and no one got hurt for the 2.5 months I was a team leader before I left country. That's one way to do it. We did a bunch of things to lower it, and then we could ramp up if we needed to. But if you're too high and you've been running at all your cylinders, high RPMs, it's really hard to come up again. But if you're here, you can respond versus react. If you're too high, you get into reaction too soon. Okay, that's one phase. The other phase is, someone is here and I gotta get there. So Philly's gritty. It's still a little rough. It's, people ready, they'll throw hands, they'll throw knives, they'll throw pistols, whatever. It's kind of Wild Westish in certain places. My neighbor has no idea my background. I'm mellow. I walk around in my little Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops, and people think that I'm just a nice dude. And he starts cussing at me, and he accused me of something, and he's yelling and screaming. He has no idea my background. And so I'm talking to him, and then he won't let up, and he's getting more and more aggressive, and this is me, and he starts to come over the top. And so I'm just, right? I have to raise my state instantly. So I turn on combat at him, and I'll rip your arms off and beat you with them. I'll take your organs and sell them on the black market. That kind of stuff. I'm going to bite your ears off. Immediately de-escalate the situation. I matched it. I matched his high level of input, maybe even went a little above it. He was like, whoa, this is a rabid dog I don't want to grab by the tail. I'm going to leave it alone. Right? And backed off, and everything came back down. So sometimes you have to be able to up elevate or escalate, or however you want to think about raising your internal state to match your environment. So those are two different versions of having to do the same thing. So you either match or modify the external state. So you either match it or modify it. You modify it by going above it or below it. Doesn't really matter. The easiest way I've found to lower my adrenaline rush, lower my fear, lower all of those things that are high energy, that agitation that Huberman talks about. I'm going to lower that agitation. The way that I do it is full diaphragmatic breathing, nice and mellow. Don't care if it's in or out of the nose. Science shows it's better in the nose with a long exhale. I had a deviated septum from a bunch of broken noses, so I got used to doing it through my mouth, but slow exhale is the key. I would put my thumb on my middle finger and try to find my pulse. Once I found my pulse in my fingers, I try to find it in my whole body. Once I got good at that, I would just touch my fingers together. I could feel my pulse in my whole body, and I would immediately de-escalate internally. I'd just mellow out. Right? That's one way to do it. Breathing, you can do it either way. And the key here is CO2. If you increase your CO2, you're going to increase this state of if you decrease your CO2, you're going to get more relaxed. So something like Wim Hof or old school Leonard Orr with rebirthing, that was a bring a lot of oxygen in, have a short exhale. More air, less exhale, agitates you, gets you hopped up. If you have a longer exhale, it's going to mellow you out. So, okay, so you can go either direction with breathing. They show that 2 breaths per exhale, 2 inhales per exhale, will lower your agitation state. So, something like David Elliott does 2 breaths for each exhale. If you extend that exhale, it'll push you into a more relaxed state. It'll move you into that rest digest state very, very quickly. So that's 2 versions of that. So making that super easy and super quick. Stress. You can either go to distress or success. Distress, washing machine. Success. You got to develop your skills. Have a high quality skill set in whatever it is that you need to do. Okay, that's pushed to the side. Micro wins are important. Build micro wins into everything. I'm going to make it to there. I'm going to make it to there. I'm going to accomplish this. Then state change. Matching my external with my internal, or modifying my internal to differentiate from my external. So if my external is too high, maybe I lower myself. If my external stays high, maybe I need to raise myself. And knowing how to do that, that's a skill set. But that's an idea that you need to work on. So I hope this is helpful with stress management. Now, mind you, stress management comes in all kinds of flavors, but knowing this stuff really helps. So you got to have good sleep hygiene. You got to have good nutrition. You got to get vitamin D. Some sort of breathing practice. Float tanks are really nice. Massage is really good for that kind of stuff. Whatever it is that you can do to de-escalate, whether that's go outside and ride a bike, whether that's go rock climbing, whether that's go do something physical. If it's problem solving, work on your problem. Those really help. Once you've figured that out, the rest of it gets to be cake. Hopefully this helps. Talk to you later.